And to support my previous colleagues, I'd like to switch in English. So my topic is formation of a green economy in Moscow, opportunities and prospects. And I'd like to start with the rank of Moscow in the ranking for sustainable city development. So the last one, the last index which was calculated for sustainable cities, it was done in 2018, and it ranks 100 global cities on 3 pillars of sustainability. It includes 3 spheres. The first one is social sphere, including the assessment of the quality of life. It's called people. The second one is the economic sphere. It's called profit. And the third one is the ecological sphere. It's called planet. So in overall standings, Moscow takes 58th place between Budapest and Dallas. And if we look separately in each sphere, in the social sphere, Moscow takes 14th place between Rotterdam and Canberra, which is not that bad. And in the economic sphere, it takes 53rd place between Miami and Detroit. And as we can see, the worst rating Moscow received for its ecological situation. So it received the 87th place between New Delhi and Istanbul. And it's quite obvious that the main task of Moscow on the way to sustainable development is to solve environmental problems as a priority. So let's have a look. What are the main problems, ecological problems for Moscow at the moment? Let's start with green energy and ecological construction. In developed countries, about 40% of greenhouse gas emissions are from buildings, of which less than 10% is from building materials and more than 90% is from operation of the buildings. And the special feature of Moscow is its northernmost location among megalopolises with population of more than 10 million people. So this imposes first a number of restrictions to reduce energy consumption. And on the other hand, it should be noted that global warming may have favorable consequences for Moscow by shortening of the heating season. There are some figures on the slide. According to consumption of the heat energy for heating new multi-story buildings, according to Russian standards, it ranges from 95 to 195 kilowatts per square meter per year. And there are technical possibilities to provide lower figures, 95 to 122 and even 77 kilowatts. And the actual consumption, on the other hand, of heat energy, especially by old houses, is several times higher than these indicators. And as a result of the modernization of apartment buildings, the energy consumption of their heating systems can be reduced to 150 kilowatt. However, it should be noted that the rate of heat consumption, even by energy efficient buildings, is in Russia is twice as high as in Germany, for example. And also it should be noted that there are some reasons for this, and let's have a look at these reasons. In 2009, the federal law on energy saving and improving efficiency was adopted. And according to this law, companies are required to install heat meters in new buildings so that residents can pay for heating not based on the area of the premises, but upon the use of utilities. Foreign experience shows that the use of such devices in and apartment metering reduces energy costs by 20%. But in 2019, the Ministry of Construction came out in favor of the abolition of mandatory meters. Why is that? Due to the fact that a decrease in temperature in one of the apartments leads to an increase in heat consumption among neighbors. So unfortunately, in Moscow, there are no such way to reduce energy consumption. So To conclude, we can say that penetration of renewable energy is very slow. First of all, the use of solar energy is hampered by its geographical location, with one of the lowest level of insolation in the world. If we look outside, it's quite obvious that there is a lack of sun in Moscow. And the second reason is that the use of wind generators is difficult due to the low wind speed. And one more reason, the least but not the last, the high availability of raw materials, minerals, and non-renewable energy sources in Russia hinders the introduction of resource-efficient technologies. So the lack of resource-efficient technologies leads to the fact that in Russia, the efficiency of the use of primary resources, including energy and water, is more than twice inferior to the leading economies, unfortunately. And also it can be added that the experience of the Scandinavian countries, first of all, also of Northern Germany, of Great Britain, of Canada, shows that it's possible to achieve widespread use of green technologies, even in weather conditions which are very similar to Moscow. Let's move to transport. Transport is one of the main pollutants. So the number of cars, first of all, now it accounts for 4.7 million units in the city, 7.7 million units in the Moscow region. And in recent years, the number of cars has grown by 8 to 10%. So it is about 400,000 units per year. The main reasons for the harmful effects of motor transport in Moscow, in addition to the rapid growth in the number of cars, it's also the lack of proper environmental certification and in the insufficient number of installations for neutralizing exhaust gases. The European Union has validated the Euro 5 certificate for cars since 2010. And in Russia, even the Euro 4 standards valid only when importing cars from abroad, and nobody knows when it's actually adopted in Russia. And one of the most important components in the formation of green megalopolises is the development of the public transport system. Here, actually, Moscow has some success. So let's have a look. First of all, the priority should be given to the most environmentally safe types, such as trolleybuses, trams, and metro. And in recent years, the main directions of improving Moscow's transport infrastructure are creation of dedicated lanes for public transport, introduction of a paid parking system, creation of a Moscow car sharing system, arrangement of bike lanes, organization of city bike and scooter rental, development of rail modes of transport, introduction of new ecological modes of transport. Here, the examples are, first of all, the launch of electric buses, creation of infrastructure for charging stations for electric vehicles, and also improvement of public spaces. In 2016, the intelligent transport system was created to efficiently manage traffic flows as well. And as a result for all these measures, the traffic load on Moscow roads decreased by 25% from 2012 to 2018. Since 2013, emissions of nitrogen oxide and carbon monoxide in Moscow have decreased by 20 and 30% respectively, and emissions of particulate matter have also decreased on average by about 10%. And also, we should note the growth in the attractiveness of Moscow transport for citizens. Actually, there are some prizes which Moscow received for its transport reforms. The calculation shows that there is an increase in the number of trips by city transport in 2018 by 12% compared to 2010. And Moscow received the most prestigious International Transport Forum Awards in the passenger transport category in 2016. There is also PricewaterhouseCoopers City Place for People Index. And Moscow ranked quite dramatic. Moscow ranked third in the development of the transport system in 2018. And also there is a McKinsey and Company index. And according to this one, the transport system of Moscow was in the 6th place in 2018. However, despite the positive dynamics, the overall level of air pollution caused by traffic in Moscow remains very high. So all these measures, of course, should be continued. Let's move to green spaces. First of all, let's state that due to the northern geographic location of Moscow, there are a number of serious restrictions on the range of green spaces. But the area of green spaces is actually quite high in Moscow. It's estimated at about 54.5% of the total city area, and the number of park areas is about 12%. And this figure is planned to increase by 7% by 2030 due to the improvement of the territories of industrial zones. It should be noted as well that there is a special feature of Moscow, and large green areas that have the status of specially protected natural areas, they are unevenly located. And they are concentrated mainly in 3 administrative districts, namely in the east, west, and south. These are Latino Ostrov National Park, Bitsovsky Forest, Filovsky Park, Izmailsky Park. Let's move to disposal and recycling of waste. First of all, unfortunately, the existing incineration plants are not enough to dispose of the entire waste stream. In total, in Moscow's residential and non-residential areas, about 7 and 9 million tons of waste is generated annually, which is almost 41 million cubic meters per year. So 56.5% of hazard level 4 and 27% of hazard level 5 end up in a landfill. And this share should be reduced to 40% and 20% respectively by 2025. But if you compare these figures to Europe, Moscow lags far behind European countries whose experience shows that it's possible to reduce the share of landfill disposal to the very minimum, up to 2% of all garbage generated. So basically it's 10 times bigger, yes, than in Europe. So there is a long way to go for Moscow. Moscow is just beginning to create a centralized system of separating collected waste with its subsequent processing into secondary raw materials. Let's move to noise pollution. So the main cause for noise pollution in Moscow is car noise, and thus requires further reducing of the traffic flow, first, and introduction of green modes of transport, second. For example, electric buses are 30% less noise emitting than buses. And also, according to the law, residential and public buildings near highways located in the zone where the standard noise level is exceeded are protected, but modern measures like very sound control measures to combat noise, such as noise screens, windows, walls, special layouts, placement of buildings can only be applied in areas of new development, but in the areas of existing buildings, only soundproof screens and windows are used. So not that much. And to finish, I'd like to present the result of the survey that I made through our students, among МГИМО students, on the possibilities of creating a green economy in Moscow. So the following questions were asked and the following answers were received. The first question was, are you familiar with the concept of sustainable urban development? Yes or no? So 60% of students, they said yes, and 40% are unfamiliar with this concept, which shows that further education is required in the field of green economy and ecology in general. And the second question was, what in your opinion does the notion green metropolis mean? It was open question, and it actually showed that despite the fact that 40% of students are unfamiliar with the concept of sustainable urban development, actually they have a general idea of what green metropolis means. So the most common answers were presence of green spaces, integration of environmental technologies, taking measures to protect the environment, use of alternative energy sources, cyclic use of resources, waste control, separate waste collection, clean air, exhaust gas control, less use of gasoline vehicles and infrastructure for the use of electric vehicles, development of cycling and more pedestrian zones, more use of trolley buses and trams than buses and cars. And another question was, in which cities, in your opinion, the green economy is successfully formed? It was an open question. And the most common answers were capitals of the Scandinavian countries, Copenhagen, Stockholm, Oslo, which also confirms the fact that Moscow can use their experience in forming the green economy because also they have similar weather conditions. And also other European cities were mentioned, such as Berlin, Geneva, Zurich, London, Helsinki, Vienna, Amsterdam. Among American cities, the most common answers were Washington and New York, among Canadian, Toronto, Asian, Singapore and Tokyo, and Australian, Sydney. And which of these environmental problems, in your opinion, are most typical for Moscow was another question. And the majority of students answered correctly that it's air pollution, 86%. Noise pollution, household waste, and water pollution are also significant problems according to our students, which is also correct. And soil pollution, climate change, and the lack of green spaces, they were mentioned as the least urgent problems. So, which is also reflects the reality. And another question was, what do you think the main environmental pollutants in Moscow can be attributed to? And here, first of all, and it was also quite correct, students mentioned road transport, cars and trucks, buses, and the other types of transport as river transport, air and rail transport were received much less positive answers, which is also correct. Also, industrial facilities were named and household waste. But operation of residential buildings, according to our students, isn't actually the main environmental pollutant, which does not reflect reality. So my last, I promise, my last slide. So there are very quick questions. In your opinion, has the transport infrastructure in Moscow become more environmentally friendly over the past 5 years? Yes, no, yes, 71%. So it confirms that actually transport forms are quite effective. Have you started walking more in Moscow? Yes, the majority, yes. So it confirms that public areas became more attractive. So do we sort the trash? Well, actually, surprisingly, somebody sorts the trash. I was surprised, but not, of course, not that many like in Europe, for example, but at least there's some hope, let's say. 36% answered yes. Do you rent bicycles and electric scooters in Moscow? Yes or no? Also, I was surprised, 40% is quite a big figure, so they rent. So basically, these new types of Moscow transport become attractive for young people. So there are conclusions and the recommendations, but actually I already named some of them during my speech, so I will not take more of your time. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer.